This is the Louie T Network.
In the lab room.
Welcome, you are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. Here to break down the London matchup between two winless teams. The 0-3 Pittsburgh Steelers are on the road against the 0-3 Minnesota Vikings. And this was a really entertaining football game. For the second consecutive week, the Minnesota Vikings play in a winless matchup and play some really entertaining football. And last week it was the Cleveland Browns and the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings came up on the short end of the stick there. This week it was the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Minnesota Vikings. And the Vikings were without starting quarterback Christian Ponder in this game. And we'll talk about this a little bit later in the program on why this is a huge deal. But give Matt Castle some credit, man. Look, I'm not a big Matt Castle guy. And ultimately his play will even out. He played really well here. And if he were to start 4 more times, you'd see the real Matt Castle. But give credit where credit is due. Matt Castle got an opportunity. He took it and he ran with it. And he played well. I didn't see any plays where I'm like, okay, that's a Matt Castle play. Where he's just throwing the football, giving the defense an opportunity to pick it off. Ike Taylor did have a couple of opportunities to pick passes off. But it was just good plays by Ike Taylor. But we all know Ike Taylor can't catch. So you can take those opportunities to challenge Ike Taylor because he's not going to make you pay for it 9 times out of 10 because he can't catch. And he didn't catch the football in this game. And that's the problem with the Steelers on defense. They don't make plays defensively to force you to make mistakes. They don't make you pay for mistakes. You make a mistake, you get away with it against the Steelers. I'll give you an example. In this football game, they force a fumble. They don't recover it. They got 3 opportunities to pick this football up. They don't. And the Vikings recover this fumble. An opportunity missed by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that's why this team hasn't forced turnovers, because they don't take advantage of those mistakes when they come their way. But this is a really good football game. Points galore. And both teams had their opportunities to run away and do some things. The Vikings had opportunities to run away with this game. The Steelers had opportunities to climb into this game and possibly take the lead, especially early on. They had opportunities to get stops. They didn't do so. They let a guy that has been relatively quiet this year in Greg Jennings explode in this game. He had a 70-yard reception on a catch and run. I mean, he did all the work on this. It's an 8-yard reception that he turns up the field, makes a couple of guys miss, and splits the seam and runs away from this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And we all know that the Steelers aren't that fast on the defensive side of the football. Jennings takes off. It's a 70-yard. And that was the story of the game for the Vikings. Big plays. Huge plays. That Jennings play, huge play. Jerome Simpson had a couple of big plays in this game as well. Adrian Peterson had a beautiful. Adrian Peterson had one of those Adrian Peterson type of runs where he just explodes up the middle, jumps over a guy, and without losing stride, hits the ground running, stiff arms the defender, takes off, and just outruns the rest of the Steelers defense. Adrian Peterson, what can you say? Exceptional athlete. This guy can do it all. And these are the type of runs that you just sit back and you marvel at what Adrian Peterson is as a specimen. Because, I mean, the guy leaves his feet, never loses stride, gets back down and outruns the defense. After stiff-arming a guy, it's just a thing of beauty to watch this man play football. AD all day, Adrian Peterson is the man. And so this Steelers team had opportunities. They were never really out of this game, even though they were threatened. At one point down 17, which is where we stopped for our momentous moment of this game. Look, Steelers down 10 at a time where they can ill afford to make a mistake. They're reeling right now. Vikings trying to run away with this game. Steelers are hanging in. They're going tit for tat. Steelers aren't allowing the Vikings to get that far away from them. And when you're an 0-3 football team, you don't want to fall behind too far, because then that here we go again starts to creep into your mindset, and you do not want that to happen. Well, Steelers down 10 in this football game. And they do the thing that they can't afford to do. They turn the football over. Roethlisberger throws an interception, picked off on the play by Chad Greenway. It leads to a Vikings touchdown and extends this lead to 17. And that to me was the game-changing play, because at that time, the Steelers were still in the football game, down 10, but they were scoring. They were moving the football. If not for a couple of self-inflicting penalties and missed opportunities, they would have scored more points in this game. And they were moving the football. It's not like the Vikings were stymieing them on defense. They were moving the football. And so if he doesn't throw this pick, if they just punt the football, who's not to say that they don't force a turnover of their own or get a stop, get good field position and go down and score, cut it to 3 or cut it to a 7-point lead or whatever the case may be. It's a different outcome is what I'm trying to say. This game is totally different if Ben doesn't turn it over in his own territory, giving the Vikings prime field position, and they take that prime field position and go get 7, extend the lead to 17. And that touchdown proved to be the difference in this game, because the Steelers ran off 10 unanswered points, but they were still down by that touchdown that was surrendered off of that pick by Ben Roethlisberger. And so that ended up being the margin of victory at the end. Steelers get the football back with a chance to tie this game, and they drive it down the length of the field, do the Steelers. They get inside the 10-yard line. They bog down. Roethlisberger can't find a way to get it in the end zone. He takes a sack. A fumble is forced. Vikings recover, and that seals the victory for the Minnesota Vikings as they get it done in London in a very, very entertaining game for the second consecutive week in which the Minnesota Vikings are involved. They get it done 34-27, getting them off the schneid. They get their first victory of the season to go to 1-3. Steelers are searching for answers. And look, Le'Veon Bell made a difference in this game. Scored 2 touchdowns. I see the difference that he makes for this football team. If he plays all 4 games, I don't know if this team is 0-4 right now, but he didn't. This was his first game, and they are 0-4, and they are struggling on the defensive side. They are making mistakes offensively, and this team is 0-4, and they're not going to be able to dig themselves up out of this hole. They're going to struggle this year. For the first time in a long time, the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't going to be a good football team. This team is going to lose 9 or 10 games this year. They're going to have a top 10, top 12 pick in the draft. They're not a good football team because they don't do the things that winning teams do. They're not doing the things that the Steelers normally do to pull these type of games. In the past, the Steelers don't lose. They find a way to win this game. This team right now is making the critical mistake. They're not forcing that turnover that changes the game. They're not making that play that puts them over the top. They're the team that isn't getting it done. And until some things change, they're going to continue to be that team. And even if they find a way to put some things together, it won't be enough in this season. You can't start in an 0-4 hole and expect to dig yourself up out of it, even though this division isn't all that good. The best record in this division right now is 2-2. And so you look at this division, and everyone in this division is knotted at 2 with the exception of the Steelers, who don't have a win yet. So it's not like this division is running away and hiding. No one's running away with this division, but at the same time, the Steelers aren't doing enough to keep themselves relevant in this division either. They dropped to 0-4. Big win for the Vikings. They finally got off of the schneid. They're 1-3 now, and they're feeling good going into the bye week. Both of these teams are on a bye next week, but it'll be a long trip home for the Steelers. It'll be a nice trip home for the Minnesota Vikings. So that'll do it for me here. Thank you for joining me. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the Lab Room. See you next time. Like the content? Want more? Sub up.
In the Lab Room.